Today we're going to talk about how to build a strategy which delivers genuine impact against your business objectives. So one of the big challenges that marketers face today is not knowing where to invest budget to hit their objectives. We ran a survey recently in which 23.9% of marketers told us that they don't know where to invest their budget to achieve their goals. That is almost a quarter. And what I found really interesting was the propensity to list this as a top 3 challenge actually increased with budget size. So the bigger the marketing budget, the more likely the marketer was to list this as a challenge. For me, that's way too many. So over the next 15 minutes or so that I've got with you, I'm going to share an approach that we use at Impression to prioritize marketing efforts that we've developed in-house to help us achieve our client goals. First place we start is with goals. What are our goals for 2024? So some of us might have goals which look a bit like this. We might have an increase in sales. We might be asked to increase revenue. Generally objectives which relate specifically to business performance. For some, it might look a bit more like this, maybe pertaining to a lofty fiscal objective, might be a competitive measure of success. But for some, it might be a bit more like this, so much more specific to what we want marketing to achieve. Thing is, with objectives like these, they are fine assuming that they are rooted in a broader business objective. So that's really the first step in prioritizing our marketing investment to deliver against growth objectives. We've got to ensure that we're asking our marketing to do something that we're resolutely confident is actually going to impact the business results that we're trying to shift. So the reason that this is important is because it's really easy to get caught up in broad brushstroke theory, which doesn't allow for the specific nuances of our own business. Sometimes they don't even allow for the nuances of the category that we're operating in. So they're never going to be as impactful as if we prioritize our efforts based on the specific dynamics of what's going on for our brand and in our category. Of course, rules of thumb are popular because they're simple, and it is easy to get overwhelmed by the wealth of data that we've got available to us now as marketers. But I'm sure lots of you are thinking, yeah, of course, we're using our data to inform our decisions. Yeah, we are. The question is, how is that data informing our prioritization? So is the way that you're using data making it easy to see which marketing objectives are going to make the most impact on the business results that we're hoping to shift? So that's what Growth Dynamics does. It simplifies the way that we interrogate and interpret data to help us prioritize our marketing efforts so that we're making the most impact. So concept itself, pretty simple, kind of has to be. In order to grow, you need 2 things. In order to grow your business, you need people to want to buy the thing that you're selling, which we call demand. You also need to be able to get it to the people who want it. So you need to have products in stock or on shelf, seats to fill, whatever it is that you sell. You got to be able to sell it to those who demand it, right? We're going to call that availability. It's a common marketing theoretical term, demand and availability. So if you can understand those 2 factors, if you can stack them up against one another, you can start to see where you need to focus to drive the most impact. So if we're happy with those concepts, we need to then quantify demand and availability. And this is where we typically start. And I've just spent the last 4 or 5 minutes talking about the need to be specific and to apply nuance. And now I'm showing you a general slide of quantifiers, which feel a bit catch-all. That's absolutely on purpose. So these quantifiers are general, they are catch-all, but they're where we tend to start when we're running this exercise for the brands that we work with, because these tend to cover what mostly what influences those factors of demand and availability. And when we get into measuring them, we are going to measure them specifically for the brand and for the category. There might be other things once we get into it which are even more specific to the brand or the category that we're working with. But for now, we're going to consider these general variables within demand and availability. So demand is a relative construct. If you have 1,000 people, 1,000 people looking for a B2B SaaS solution is going to feel very different to 1,000 people trying to book a flight to New York. Same number, 1,000, but within the context of those categories, they feel very, very different. So we try to contextualize demand for the thing that you're selling within a broader macro sector. And then we might look at how that demand is waxing or waning over time. Is it getting hotter or cooler? And we're also going to look at how competitive the space is that we're playing in. So how much are we going to need to fight for attention? All of those things ladder up to demand. Then when we get into availability, we're looking at how competitive we are within that space. Are we winning that attention or not? And then can we actually fulfill the demand that's expected of us? So again, use that 1,000 people example. There are a usually finite number of seats on any flight to New York at any given time, because you've only got so many to sell, usually, versus potentially an infinite number of SaaS subscriptions, server depending, that you might be able to sell your customers. And so if we can do that, assuming that we can fulfill the products that our customers are demanding of us, how good are we at doing that? How long is it taking your potential customers to convert? Are people dropping off? Are they going elsewhere for whatever reason? All of that, broadly speaking, is availability. And then crucially, right at the bottom here, when we're quantifying growth, we want to be looking at actual business metrics. We're not looking at marketing or media metrics. Those are a means to an end. They're not the end in and of itself. So now that we have quantifiable metrics, now we're going to measure them. So again, these data sources on the right-hand side, they're a great place to start. They are pretty general, but they're a good place to start in measuring the variables that we've just been talking about. They're not the only ones. We might find other ones useful when we actually get into the exercise. So much of these are pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through all of them individually, but I did just want to shout out that search in particular, in all of its glorious forms, is actually a fantastic behavioral indicator of demand right the way across the customer journey. So when we're searching, we're raising our hands, we're asking for help with something, and a lot of the time, those raised hands are sitting somewhere along a customer journey. It's a great way to understand demand, not just for specific products and brands, but for broader categories, interests, triggers, anything which leads into a brand or product search, and ultimately a conversion. Remember also that search behavior occurs in lots of different environments, not just traditional search. So when we are looking at search as a measure of demand, make sure that we're looking in the right environments for your category. So this is the visual output of a growth dynamics exercise. And what you can see is demand and availability ready to be plotted out with demand on the x-axis, availability on the y-axis. As we've been measuring all of those variables in the past couple of slides, we will have benchmarked them to the point of giving them a relative impact on which we can plot on this quadrant. And what this then does is give us our priority jobs to be done. So priority is the operative word, because there may very well be other things that we need to hit as part of the marketing plan. But this is really all about priority and focus. So from low to high demand, limited to high availability. If you're in the top right, high, lots of demand for your thing, you're up there with the best of them at shifting it. Your priority is probably going to be in maintaining an efficient full funnel or full journey performance. So we don't mean simply efficient conversion. We really do mean full funnel performance approach. And that means ensuring that we're continuing to drive those upper funnel metrics and not just relying on demand in that purchase moment. An example of a client of ours who sits here is a well-known specialist DIY brand. They are the market leader in their quite competitive category. When we dug into the journey, we were seeing that certain competitive generalist retailers were stealing a bit of a march on consideration metrics. That doesn't have a dramatic short-term impact, but it is something that we had to mitigate for in our planning, prioritize our own upper to mid-funnel activity so that we can get ahead of it before we see any long-term impact. And that's the full funnel efficiency approach, which is born out of that top right high dynamics. So then what if demand is relatively low, but you've got lots of stuff to sell? This is probably where you're going to need to grow the category by inspiring new customers into it, aligning your brand with the growth of the category itself. A good example here is a travel brand who operate routes to some less familiar, let's say, destinations, certainly places which are less in demand at certain times of year. The job to be done there was to increase desirability for those destinations, attaching the brand to that desirability, nurturing customers through to conversion further along the journey. Then if we're relatively low demand, limited availability, usually we're going to focus on increasing customer value as a priority means to drive growth. A great example of this one is a high-end furniture retailer for whom demand relatively low versus the general furniture category. It's not a super competitive category, not particularly high frequency either. You've got big ticket furniture items. People don't really buy lots of those regularly. But what we also found actually when we dug into it was the site wasn't really converting people all that well. So you got people coming to the site, browsing, potentially converting elsewhere. What we did there was focus on how to improve the conversion potential of those who were coming to the site, and then also improve that repeat customer experience, repeat customer rates alongside that improved on-site experience, driving organic growth amongst existing customers. That eventually led to more budget to go back and find more incremental customers and bring those into the brand. But first, we really had to sort out that existing customer value. And then lastly, what if you're in a high demand category, but you've got limited availability? So in this case, it might be that the category is super competitive. You're a little fish in a very big pond. So even though there's loads of demand out there, you're struggling to grab hold of it. The job here, again, is likely to be a brand one, but it's much more about disruption and diverting existing category demand away from your competitors by being bold, high impact, differentiating yourselves. We're actually working on something like this right now with an auto retailer. We're very much a smaller fish in a bigger pond. The resulting strategy is much more about how we break category norms and make a bigger impact with our brand through our marketing. So what are the new emergent behaviors that our customers have, that our customers are exhibiting, our competitors haven't tapped into yet? So those are the 4 dynamic quadrants, but crucially, in order to make this work, we have to bring them back to our marketing objectives. So remember, the word of the day is nuance. This is typically where we tend to see most things shaking out as a result of this exercise. Sometimes this differs based on, as I say, the nuance of the category or the brand, but broadly speaking, this is what we would expect to see as a marketing objective based on the category or brand dynamics. So to summarize all of this, remember, we got to start this process with our growth objectives. How are we trying to shift the business? Not marketing objectives, they come later. Then we're going to look at demand and availability as the 2 big factors in plotting your growth dynamics. These are going to give us the most impactful prioritization to hit those growth objectives. And then from that, a much clearer path to a much more impactful marketing strategy. Thank you for your time.